Hey, Scrappy People, it's Traci Reader here today, coming at you with a traveler's notebook layout using the Cocoa Daisy Up and Away collection. However, I am starting in Photoshop with a little tutorial on how to use a layered template in your traveler's notebook. So this weekend I released my Pocket Starters templates, and they are 12 by 12 pocket style templates intended for obviously a project lifestyle layout or any form of pocket scrapbooking. However, this year I am not really pocket scrapbooking, and I'm certainly not doing 12 by 12, but that does not mean that I cannot use these templates in my other work. So I'm going to be using the Pocket Starters number 4, which is in this set number 1 in my store, and I'm going to be using one of these 4x6 cards as a sort of template through my Silhouette machine to scrapbook this photo that I have open. So I'm actually going to use this one right here because I think it would be really cool in my traveler's notebook. So I'm just going to duplicate this template so that I don't accidentally save over it, and then I'm going to close the original. So I'm going to go to Image, Duplicate, and then I'm just going to close the original one. And now all I have to do is just delete all of these layers that I'm not going to use. I'm just going to do that to begin with because it makes my life super easy, and I'm not going to use this 4x6 card layer. So all I really want is this adorable set of circles, and I'm going to send this through my Silhouette to make it super easy. Now obviously this is a 4x6 card, so this is a little bit smaller than 6 inches across. So I'm actually going to rotate it 90 degrees and pull it down so that it's 6 inches tall and not 6 inches wide, because a traveler's notebook is 8.25 by 4.25. So I want my embellishment here to be vertically aligned. And then I'm going to turn off the drop shadows that are on these templates. So all you have to do with all of these layers still selected from the rotation is just come over here to any of the layers, right click and hit clear layer style, and it will clear the drop shadows on all of the layers. Now I'm going to be using my physical product with this template and not digital product. I'm going to be using Cocoa Daisy physical product, and I'm going to be doing that through my Silhouette. So what I need to do is I need to set up this 12 by 12 canvas, which is the same as a 12 by 12 Silhouette mat, to easily cut out all of these little circles of paper. So what I can do to make this super easy is I can cut out all of these circles of paper on one pattern paper if I wanted to, or if I want to get super fancy with it, I can use a bunch of different papers. And I think I'm going to get super fancy because that's just how I roll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the grid by hitting Command or Control and the apostrophe. And this is the same grid that is on your Silhouette mat. So I'm going to use this grid to align my layers to certain areas on my Silhouette mat so that I can easily put down papers in certain grids on my Silhouette mat and align my cuts to certain papers. So you can see that this is 4 by 6, obviously. So I'm going to put it right over here. I'm actually going to go in just 1/4 of an inch because the Silhouette sometimes has a hard time cutting right to the edge. So I'm going to move in just 1/4 of an inch with my cut file. And then I'm going to repeat the process with all of these little squares, or all these little circles in their own little squares. So these circles are just over an inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them all their own little 1 or 2 inch squares just to make it super easy. So here is 2 inches, and then 2 inches here, 2 inches here, and then just repeat the process all the way down your Silhouette mat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include little 2-inch cuts of whatever patterns that I want to cut these circles out of on my Silhouette mat. And when we move over to the Silhouette process, I will, of course, show you that, how I set up my silhouette mat. So here we go. Each one of these circles has their own little 2 by 2 inch area that they are aligned to. And I'm actually going to move this in a little bit more just to make it super easy. So when I decide what paper I want to cut this part out of, it's going to be on a 5 by 7 cut, like a 5 by 7 size paper. So the last thing that we need to do is I'm going to merge all of these layers. So I'm going to hit Command Shift E, and that merges all of the layers. It's Control Shift E if you're on a PC. And then I'm going to add a color overlay to this one layer now, and I'm going to do it in black because that is what the silhouette recognizes the easiest. So I'm going to hit OK. And what you can see here, this template or this cut might be a little bit too delicate in here for the silhouette. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and then I'm going to use my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to draw a box around this cut file. And then I'm going to hit Command J to create a new layer from the selection. And then I'm going to add a stroke to just this new layer. So I'm going to double click on the FX over here, and I'm going to add a stroke, and I'm going to make it centered, black, and let's see what 10 pixels looks like. That makes it a little less delicate. What about 15? Yeah, that makes me a little bit more comfortable. So 15 pixels, and you can see the difference here between the original and this one. And I want it to have more of a border between these junctions right here, but I don't want it to have more of a border on the inside because I want to show as much of this pattern paper as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this layer that I just created, and then with my magic wand tool, I'm going to click on the bottom layer, and then I'm just going to click inside each one of these circles while holding down Shift to add to my selection. So I'm holding down Shift and clicking inside each one of these circles until I've got them all selected. And then I'm going to turn this layer back on, and I'm just going to merge the layers together again by hitting Command Shift E. And what that'll do is it'll merge the layers, but it keeps my selection intact. So now I can just hit my delete key, and it will delete the inside of that selection that I had created previously and get rid of that extra border around the inside of the paper. So now all I have to do is save this file somewhere where I can find it for my silhouette program to pick up easily. And then make sure you save it as a PNG file because that is what the silhouette reads easily. And then you're going to open it up in your silhouette program. Program open, and I'm just going to go to File, Open, and I'm going to open the file that I just created in Photoshop. And then once it's open, I just use the trace panel to trace the shapes and then send it to my silhouette. Super easy. Okay, so say hi to the kitty. I have some scraps here that I want to use from my last layout. And this one is not quite 2 inches across, but it is close enough that the margin of error is not a big deal. So I have to have 12 squares all together. So I'm going to start with cutting down these scraps and see where I am after that. Okay, so I decided to recut this blue paper. And I guess if I was going to recut it, I didn't need to use the blue paper, but it is what it is. Because this version of it, I think, was a journaling card, and it's a little bit duller than this version of it. And so that would have bothered me if I had 2 that were dull. Hey, stop flicking me, cat. 2 that were dull and 2 that were not. So I have all of those, and now I need to have a 5 by 7 that will be the circle container holder thing. And so I want something super simple because it's going to have a lot of color going on here. So I want white. Would green look good? Green might look good, but not with that blue. I think I'm going to use the white. Yeah, we're just going to use the grid. So I'm going to cut this down to 5 by 7 in this area. Now this should be fine. This over here should be fine. If not, it's not a big deal. I will make it work if we have a little bit of that hot air balloon there. But other than that, it's not a big deal. So I am going to put you on fast forward and tape all this down and send it through my silhouette. Okay, so we're off to the races. I've got all of my pieces cut out here. I actually have 4 extra, so that was smart. But I am going to glue down all of the little circles by adding liquid glue to like the holes of the mat first. It won't be exact, but I can move them around pretty quickly because the liquid glue allows me to move things before it settles too much. So I'm just kind of haphazardly placing them down, and I'm going to put the mat over top of them after I have straightened them out a little bit, making sure that the patterns are all upright and that sort of a thing, and that they are centered where they need to be. So next, I am going to glue this down, obviously, adding more liquid glue here, making sure that it aligns as good as possible. There we go. Okay, so now I need to start working on building around this piece. So initially my thoughts were that I would put my photo over the top of this mat, but I ended up not wanting to cover it up. Like I wanted it to stand on its own and not have like all of that work that I just went through covered up, because I printed the photo at 3 by 4, but it just, the dimensions were a lot larger than I had expected, even though I should have known. But so I initially have it over the top of that. But what I'm going to end up doing is moving the photo over to the other side. And then I am going to, well, first I'm going to mat it in this pretty floral, because I love the floral so much in this collection. And then I'm going to take this list of things I'm currently doing well card, and I'm going to layer it underneath. And so I was struggling a little bit because I really wanted that photo to be on the right hand side because of the direction that my eyes are looking. Like they end up looking off the page the way that this ends up working, which I find kind of annoying. So I initially, I was like, well, maybe I'll just turn everything around and I will switch sides, but that's not going to work with the way that my holes are punched. And then, of course, my camera cut out. So what I ended up doing was I created a little divider with a piece of patterned paper, a 3-inch piece of patterned paper, and then a 3 by 4 inch mat, and then a 3 by 4 card to sort of divide up this side of the page from this side of the page. And my camera messed up and cut out that process, but it was really just super simple. Not a big deal. So I'm struggling a little bit now with how to incorporate this side of the page in with the other side of the page, so that it makes a cohesive layout instead of what feels like right now 2 separate thoughts, 2 separate layouts. So I'm taking some of these circular stickers and I am just kind of layering them around this mat and having fun, and I still haven't really settled on what I want to do here. So I'm going to do this list of things I'm currently doing well. I'm going to add to that. And then what I do is I pull in this card that says just chilling, relaxing, snacking, and Netflixing, which is basically, you know, quarantine life right now. And on that side of the page, so on this side of the page it says I'm doing creating and resting well, and I look content and I look settled, right? And I decide that I want to use these little banners as a pull tab, but I end up changing this later because they're just too pointy and it doesn't make any sense with the circles on the other side. But I am going to have them on here for the majority of the video. Actually, almost the whole entire rest of the video, because the last thing I do is change these pull tabs into an actual tab. So I don't like the way that they look. I don't like the way that they look initially when I put them down, but I just leave it anyway. So what I'm going to do, what I've decided on now, is that this side of the spread is going to be reality, or not reality, but like the other side of the coin. So I print out another photo that I took when I was trying to decide on the story for these photos, because they were part of my everyday selfie love photo challenge. And so I didn't know exactly which story I wanted to tell with this photo. So I have a few photos with different expressions in them, and this one I look sort of exasperated, so I added the title "Over This Shiz." So I'm sorry if I offend you, but I'm over this already. So then I added this day after day. So what happens is this side of the page is like this happy, pretty, you know, sunshiny sort of spread, and then the other side of the page is the other side of the coin. And you know, if you're anything like me, you go back and forth on a, you know, hourly basis which way you're feeling. So I just thought it was kind of a good way to sort of capture both sides of the coin and tell one story with basically 3 or 4 pages, right? So I'm using the stamps in the Cocoa Daisy collection to add the date. So I'm adding April. And of course, with this last stamp, I put a mark right on my head. So I printed out another photo and replaced it. And then once I was done with that, I decided that this page was looking good, and I was happy with the way that it was feeling and the way that it looked, except for those pull tabs. So I'm going to take them off and add a actual tab from the collection instead. And then I believe that's the last thing I do. I call it good after that. So if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you. And there's a step-by-step tutorial over on the blog at tracireed.com with how I did this layout. All right, I will link that in the comment section below, and I will see you next time. All right, thank you.